I will admit to everybody the first time, and I hear this from my clients every time I suggest a breakfast salad. They're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, a salad in the morning is not what I'm thinking, not what sounds good. And I was like, I get it, right? Totally. The first time I did it, I was so skeptical. I was like, I don't know about this. I was blown away by my energy and my mood.
Great. Well, it's a real pleasure to have Jenn Trepeck today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
When we first talked, we were talking a lot about blood sugar and how important that is for women in this menopause transition. So I want you to break down why that's important. But before we do, explain what that means. Maybe somebody out there is like, how do I know if my blood sugar isn't balanced?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times people go, oh, does that mean that I have to wear a device that's going to tell me my blood sugar all the time? And the truth is, we don't need it. One of the greatest indicators of blood sugar dysregulation is dramatic changes in energy. So if you feel tired after you eat, if you feel like you have breakfast and then mid-morning you're hungry again, but it's not really time for lunch, in air quotes. And then afternoon, you're ready for that. You need a pick me up, whether it's caffeine or chocolate or something mid-afternoon. If you feel like there are times in the day where you simply cannot keep your eyes open, no matter what you do, and you end up on this roller coaster frequently, that's a sign of blood sugar dysregulation. If you have weight gain that you feel like isn't moving and you don't understand why, you feel like you're doing all the things, right? That can be a sign. If we're easily distracted and we don't necessarily have much of an attention span for extended periods of time, that's another sign. So there's a lot of pieces to this where sure, a blood test could reveal a lot, right? But we can even notice this in our day-to-day life. Like, it doesn't require that we go get blood work. But if you do have blood work, the number that this would be, we're sort of looking at two things. One would be your fasting glucose, and the other is your A1C. A1C is giving you, typically it's about a 3-month look at your blood sugar. And even when we're focusing on optimal health, you can look at your healthcare provider's typical ranges to give you an idea of where you're falling. And with that, like I said, you don't even have to go get that blood work because we'll see it in day-to-day life.
So what would,
And then,
what would be what would the number be, say, for fasting glucose or A1C to say, yep, your blood sugar is out of balance?
Yeah, if your fasting glucose is over 100, we're going to want to say, let's look at this. I think these days the technical number on the A1C is over 5. But even still, that more likely is just going to confirm what you already know based on the things that you're experiencing day to day.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even if you are in the lower range or barely there or not, you have all the signs and symptoms, then it's probably worth
Exactly.
look at. So low energy, hunger when you shouldn't be, little bit of caffeine in the middle of the day, you're feeling sluggish, your metabolism is slow, that weight gain is hard to find, hard to get rid of, and you're easily distracted. Those are some, and that's frequently, not just one day.
We all sometimes don't sleep so well and we feel like we're pulling ourselves through the day. But it's what's the norm, right? Is it always that mid-morning you're like, oh, I'm hungry again? Is it that you can't make it through a day without feeling like you need a nap after you eat something? Those are some of those telltale signs. Yeah.
I remember hearing David Sinclair, who's in longevity
Sure.
space, and he said I think he said the biggest marker or indicator of how long you'll live, or how, I don't remember if it was the quality of life, is your insulin number. Like, go check that out because that will tell you a lot about how long you will live and the quality of life. So let's kind of, explain a little bit what happens if we don't pay attention to these signs and symptoms and take care of our blood sugar.
frankly, I'm trying to think of it. The short version is it creates inflammation in the body. Inflammation is the root of all sickness, illness, disease, and
Chronic
symptoms.
low grade inflammation.
Exactly.
We need some inflammation, right? But at
Right. Like
times
acute
appropriate.
inflammation. Exactly. So acute inflammation is we injure ourselves and it's swollen, whether it's a cut and then the cut on your finger is a little red and swollen, or like I remember as a dancer, like doing something to my ankle and then your ankle is swollen. That is inflammation that is healing, that is acute, short-lived, right? What we're talking about is chronic systemic inflammation in the body. And that is where we see disease states thrive in an inflammatory environment. One of the interesting things, especially as it relates to blood sugar, is when we are not properly responding to insulin, when we are in that state of metabolic dysregulation, it really throws off every system in the body. And so when we talk about longevity, it makes it harder to keep muscle. It makes it harder to think clearly. Alzheimer's is often referred to as type 3 diabetes because of what happens with the plaques and oxidation in the brain. With cholesterol, it's not even so much that cholesterol is a problem, but oxidized or right cholesterol that is coated in sugar is the problem. So really, it impairs every other organ and every other system in the body when we are not able to take in nutrition, absorb it, convert it into fuel we can use, and get rid of the things that we don't need. So it would be simpler to say, oh, it's just the heart. Oh, it's just, but it is everything from the liver, the thyroid, the pineal gland. Every system in the body is connected. And what we see more and more in the research is that our metabolic health, our ability to take in fuel and use it effectively, which very much hinges on insulin, is really an indicator of overall health. And as David Sinclair said, longevity.
I would say the short answer is accelerated aging.
Right, right.
If you want to accelerate that process, keep doing what you're doing. Forget about fixing your blood sugar levels. That's okay. Okay, it's pretty important now. Let's talk about then why women become more imbalanced with their blood sugar or insulin resistant when she loses her hormones as she's going through this menopause transition, because we talk a lot about that and it's quite important.
Yeah, so we often think of these hormones as really just functioning in terms of our cycle or our sex hormones. And the reality is estrogen and progesterone play critical roles in insulin sensitivity, in our ability to use nutrients, in our body's ability to not store fat and to burn fat, and even indicates where on the body we hold on to fat. There are pieces with estrogen and progesterone that connect to the gut and our hunger and our cravings. And so really, insulin production is less efficient when estrogen decreases. Changes in our hormone balance, right? So as estrogen decreases, as progesterone decreases, we see that there's a shift in our sensitivity to insulin, leading to higher blood sugar levels. We then store more fat. In particular, we store more fat around the belly versus lower in the body, typically more around our hips. Not to mention that another piece of estrogen is our ability to build and maintain muscle, right? So estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, a lot of people think that it's just one thing. Oh, this one thing is dropping and that's what's creating the problem. The reality is we need all of the hormones in proper proportions at different times. So that's where we end up seeing a lot of these symptoms. And when we have maybe one hormone that's unchecked by another, we see a lot of the symptoms. So one of the other pieces here is we've often heard we lose muscle mass as we age. right? Or our metabolic rate slows. A lot of this connects back to estrogen and progesterone and our body's ability to hold onto and build muscle. So, yes, we lose muscle as we age, but more and more research now shows that's actually not as dramatic as we once thought it was. The piece is more about how hard it is to build and maintain the muscle that we have. And that, by the way, which I know we'll get into, is only exacerbated by the food choices that we often employ to try to manage that excess weight gain that seems to come out of nowhere, right? So we can exacerbate the issues that we're seeing. But fundamentally, when our hormones change, how the body functions in every aspect also changes. And so, again, I think the beauty of it is that the nutrition that we need for one thing actually serves all the things. So, eating to keep our blood sugar balanced also provides the nutrients that our body needs for those hormones, for proper insulin sensitivity and all of those things.
Yeah. With the woman who's listening now, maybe going through this transition, is realizing she can't eat like she used to, right? The blood sugar is out of balance. She's got too much of it. Insulin's maybe not kicking in and pulling it out of the bloodstream, putting it in the muscle. It's putting into the fat. So you're getting this weight gain issue. So in fact, I always like to call muscle metabolic spanks because
Yes.
it helps regulate our blood sugar, right? And we can manage our weight so much better the more muscle we put on. And then just as the gerontologist in me says, we're going to need it anyways, because we're going to need it because we also, as you can probably explain, our gut is not able to break down the nutrients like it used to. It can't break down proteins into essential amino acids and shuttle them to be used as we could when we were in our 20s. So it is really, really important. And I just got off a podcast interview. Again, every time I get a fitness guy or a fitness girl out and talking about muscle. And I learned I'll never forget, in one of my gerontology classes, it was on the physiology of aging. And the professor came out and he was like, we were talking about sarcopenia. And he says, I call BS on sarcopenia. We're all sitting on our ass, not moving. And
right.
so it's nuts. I was expecting some, I don't know, hormonal shift, some biological change that we can't control. He just says we got to move that lever. Not to say that the loss of our hormones has nothing to do with it, or our gut has nothing to do with it, and all the microbes. It's just, it's harder as we get older.
It's a perfect storm, right? It's all of the things. Oh, I just whacked the microphone. Sorry. It's all of the things in combination. Right. So I always say, similar to, right, muscle dictates metabolism. The more muscle is metabolically active tissue, the more muscle we have, the more fuel we burn, right? Whether we're sitting or doing an activity. And then certainly as we age, we become more sedentary. Even now in the prime of our lives, right? We are just more sedentary as humans than humans were designed to be. But I also say to people, like, we've heard sitting is the new smoking. Right. I also like to remind everybody, they say that because sitting all day is not human, right? But it's also not human to sit all day and then go berserk for an hour, right? So it's about finding those little bits of movement. But that also brings up a really interesting piece as we talk about this phase of life. Because even the movement patterns that we used to really love and we used to feel like worked, and I put work in air quotes, right? They aren't the same. The body doesn't respond the same way to those kinds of activities. So for everybody out there who was a hit girl, who loved those super intense workouts, we want to pull back a little bit. We do want resistance training. We do need to build muscle. But we want to build muscle and focus on more of the walking, the lower intensity, maybe more zone 2 kind of cardio. An interval at zone 3 is maybe like 60 to 90 seconds, not all that long. Because what ends up happening is those more intense workouts that we used to do, whether it's a spin class or a boot camp class, some of those, they actually register to the body in this phase of life as a stressor. And stress and the increase in cortisol wreaks havoc on the balance of other hormones. And so really we want to keep that in check. As much as we're focusing on the nutrition piece, the movement piece is so critical. And there's also an adjustment that we probably need to make there too.
Yeah, it's so nuanced. And when you want
Yes.
to build muscle, we understand, well, you've got to stress the muscle. You have to go a little beyond. You have to get uncomfortable. You've got it. There's these things, but you also, especially in this phase of life, need to recover because all we sometimes hear is build, push it, and then we break. Or we have so much cortisol and never bringing it down. You're like, you're not getting any results. So I always think it's always such a balance. And that's our job as biohackers. We're all got to biohack our biology and figure out what it is, because for you may be different than for me. That's the nuance that we all have to find. And we have all this information. We just now have to figure out how to apply it to ourselves. I've got another question. So you've been coaching women in nutrition for 17 years, maybe more, something like that. And you've hosted over 500 episodes on your health and wellness podcast. So what are your top 3 tips for keeping blood sugar stable during perimenopause and beyond?
Yes. All right. Here we go, everybody. All the note takers. All right. Number one, the thing that I say to everybody on the nutrition front, protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. Protein and fiber.
Say it again.
Protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. Okay.
Okay.
Protein is clean, lean protein. Eat what you like. Don't eat what you don't like. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't really care if that's animal or plant or something else. You get to decide. There are considerations in those choices that we could certainly talk about. So protein is clean, lean protein. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. A meal is actually any time we eat. The only difference between a meal and a snack is how much we have at a time, and then therefore how long it's going to last us until we need to fuel again. So a meal, proper serving for a biologically female body, protein at a meal is 4 to 6 ounces. So your whole hand. A snack, well, okay, male bodies, by the way, also the whole hand, but that's 6 to 8 ounces. And then for everybody, a snack is 2 to 3 ounces, which is like the palm or a little less.
Okay.
Vegetable, like I don't live with like measuring cups in my handbag. I really hope nobody does. I'm not big on like weighing and measure it, right? Our eyeballs, our hands are great. Vegetables, a serving is a handful. If it's greens, it's 2 handfuls for 1 serving. Over the course of the day, we're looking for 8 to 12 servings of vegetables. It is a massive amount of food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A couple fruits a day if you want. And then the other thing we need a couple times a day is quality fat. Mm-hmm. A serving of olive oil is like a tablespoon. A serving of avocado is half of an avocado. Walnuts, almonds, small handful, right? We don't have to go wild. The reality is we didn't get here because of the avocado and the walnuts. So relax.
Yeah.
But eating those foods in combination balances our blood sugar, keeps us satisfied, keeps our brain fueled, keeps our body fueled, keeps our energy stable. That's really the key to eating for longevity, to eating for health, to eating for blood sugar balance, for metabolic health, for weight management. If you don't have weight to lose, you're not going to become like a stick figure, right? But if we do, if our body is holding on to fat that it doesn't need, number one, eating this way, we're never adding to our fat stores. And number two, over time, when we're consistent, the body will release fat stores that it's been holding on to. We can dig more into that, but that's all number one. So number one,
that's all number one.
Nutrition
okay,
things.
Tell us what a plate looks like, though. You said clean, lean protein. That's what does a breakfast look like with that and the fiber?
Yeah, so veggie omelet, 3 to 4 eggs, or do a combination of eggs and egg whites if it feels like too much. bunch of veggies in there. And a sneaky way to get more fiber in a meal is I will throw, like, you can have veggies in your omelet, whatever you want. And then on the bottom of the plate, I'll throw 2 handfuls of spinach or arugula or some kind of greens. Just add it on there. It becomes part of the thing that you're eating, but it's one more serving of vegetables that we didn't realize. I have
That's
a lot
actually,
of clients.
go
Yeah.
ahead. That's actually, it's so if anybody follows me, they see my breakfast is very much like that. But I do the veggie stir fry because I just love,
Right.
I like
Yeah.
it warm, but it is the egg. But I feel I need more protein in my case. So my little sneaky trick is to add cottage cheese in the middle. I
Yes.
tolerate dairy and I don't eat tons of it, but it is such a great way to and it's nice. It feels really good. So I love that.
Yeah. I have another client who loves a cottage cheese omelet. Omelet. I can't even speak English. Another piece in there too is my favorite thing. What I prefer to eat is a breakfast salad.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So whatever greens you have, throw them in a bowl, right? Whatever vegetables, throw it in. And then the hack to all of this is cook the eggs like poached or sunny side up or whatever so that your yolk is still runny. The eggs go on top of the salad. The runny yolk becomes like a creamy salad dressing. And then I use everything bagel seasoning. And it's a breakfast salad. You could throw in some balsamic vinegar or things like that in there, right? Some avocado. You can certainly add in what you enjoy. But the first time, I will admit to everybody, the first time, and I hear this from my clients every time I suggest a breakfast salad, they're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, a salad in the morning is not what I'm thinking, not what sounds good. And I was like, I get it. Right? Totally. The first time I did it, I was so skeptical. I was like, I don't know about this. I was blown away by my energy and my mood.
Yeah.
Blown away. And it sold me. And now it is my preferred way to have breakfast.
Yes, absolutely. I'm on board with you 100%. I went through a phase where every morning I was eating salad for breakfast. And when I go out to eat, when I'm nomading and you're all eating all the time out, I always ask, I just scan the menu. I'm like, is there a salad for breakfast? And if there is, so what I do is your hack. Exactly. I tell them no dressing or put it on the side. I don't know what it is. Who knows what they're putting on there? And then drowning it doesn't taste good anyways. And then I get the runny egg and that acts as a dressing. And I'll get, can you have a couple of slices of lemon? and,
Yep.
and usually most restaurants have that. So you're absolutely right. That fat from the egg and the yolk, and it's just perfect. I'm so glad.
Or they'll have like a breakfast bowl. And I'll ask them, I'll say less of the grain, extra on the greens. And they always look at me and they're like, huh? I'm like, yes, less of the
quinoa bowl. Can you just put
yeah,
the
whatever.
Forget the
right. Like less of the grains, more of the greens, please. When they're, you can find it. Yeah.
They'll do it for you. They'll do it for you. Okay, you totally
Yeah.
interrupted. So now we know what protein and fiber looks like, and then you have that quality fat. What's the next one?
We almost already talked about it, but that's build muscle and walk.
Mm-hmm.
So pick up heavy things, put them back down, and do that over and over, right? You don't have to go to the gym, right? Pick up a big thing of laundry detergent and put it back down and pick it up again. One of my favorite hacks I call DWDS, stands for drink water, do squats. So we're going to drink more water. Inevitably, when we drink more water, we're going to have to go to the bathroom more. So every time we go to the bathroom, hold on to the sink and do 10 squats. Right?
Yeah.
You'll be amazed.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get sweaty. You don't have to change your clothes. It's super easy. But drink water, do squats. You'll be amazed at what happens at the end of the day with a few more squats in your life.
And you can actually anchor some of these things you already do, like brushing your teeth or washing your face. And I
Exactly.
don't remember if I told you I had some hip surgeries. And so I have got to get more mobility. So my thing now is while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm doing my hip exercises or my leg lifts. You're sitting there anyways, brushing your teeth. I've got the electric toothbrush and an electric face cleanser. It's on a timer. I got to sit there for 2 minutes. What am I going to do? And so you might as well do something. So anchoring it too. So now that when I brush my teeth, it's like, oh, I'm missing something if I don't start doing my little leg lifts, right?
Love it. Yeah. It's
Okay.
awesome.
So yeah, we got the protein and fiber, build muscle and walk. Those are the
Yep.
top tips that anyone can do.
And then I'll give you the bonus or the third or whatever, and that's sleep and stress. I
Mhm.
call sleep the ultimate biohack,
I-
right? Like if there's one thing you prioritize, let it be the sleep. So often people will tell me all of the, and I do a lot in my practice with supplementation, but they will tell me all the supplements they're taking, or they'll tell me the latest trendy biohacking thing that they're doing. But then when we start to talk about what their day looks like, what time they go to sleep, what time they wake up, how much quality sleep they're actually getting, and it's like you could save a lot of money if you just slept. There is nothing in our health that is not improved with sleep.
I agree.
And then managing that stress, sleep is part of that for sure. But especially as we're in this phase of life, what registers as stress, like that activity we used to do, the impact of cortisol on estrogen and progesterone and our body's ability to function becomes even more sensitive and even more important for us to pay attention to that.
The continuous glucose monitors that we put on our arm can help. Like you mentioned, you don't have to, but it does give such great insight into how the foods that you eat are impacting your body. But when I work with clients, it was, we were doing these challenges, the glucose monitor challenges, and every time people were so surprised that stress had an impact that increased their blood sugar. They said, I swear to God, I didn't eat anything, but you see this huge spike. Well, what happened? Well, I had a fight with my partner, or I had a business call, or something happened. So people don't realize it's not just about food, but exercise impacts, the stress impacts. And so I love the glucose monitors just to give you a little bit of a insight. And one thing about blood sugar levels, I talk about this sometimes with the people where it's appropriate, is that when we wear these things, at least when I was wearing the glucose monitor for the very first time, I was waking up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I don't know what that was. And I was like, God, is it because my bladder's weak or something? And what I figured out was the blood sugar was going too low. I was leaving 3 hours in between dinner and going to bed. I was doing the walk after dinner. I was doing everything, all the biohacks we're supposed to be doing, and it was too much. And my blood sugar just kept waking me up. And I had no idea it was because of blood sugar. And it was because of this monitor. And I was really surprised. So there's another blood sugar thing for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the CGMs are becoming more and more accessible to people, but I also think unless you are working with somebody who can really help you understand the information that they're providing, they may not be as helpful as we want them to be. So, yes, there are situations like waking up 1 to 3 a.m. can either be lungs in Chinese medicine or blood sugar. And so, for those people, we can experiment with a handful of walnuts before bed. Right? Let's see how that holds us over. Let's see how we respond to certain things. Especially with the CGM, your blood sugar is going to increase from a workout because that is your body releasing the glycogen, right, to fuel. So there are certain things that we expect. There are certain things that are actually a really healthful sign that if we don't know what we're looking at, if we don't understand what's happening, might cause us to make some other changes or things that may not serve us in the long run. So I'm a big fan of them. I think they can be super enlightening, provided we have somebody to ask those questions to and work with on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because yeah, I think you need to get some insight from. It's hard to understand if you don't really know what you're looking at. Okay, you've mentioned actually, I listened to your podcast and you talk about obesity and weight gain, and you say it's a function of starvation or undereating rather than overeating sometimes. And I see this all the time in our community of women who are really training harder, eating less. So let's talk about why this isn't working for some women in midlife anymore.
Yeah. And the truth is, it may never have worked, even when we were younger. The question is, how do we define working? So if we're saying we want the number on the scale to go down, then sure, eat less, move more, quote unquote, worked at other times in life. But what is actually happening by body composition when we take that approach? When we cut out whole food groups, when we dramatically cut calories, when we follow a lot of the diets and plans that we've been told, right? Eat less, move more. The number on the scale goes down for a little while. When that happens, what we're losing is water, muscle, and bone.
Great. This thing
Because
we
our
need.
body, in
Yeah.
an effort to survive, is using its own muscle for fuel and it's pulling vitamins and minerals from our bones. So the scale stops moving because our body goes, okay, I need to protect myself now. I'm going to survive. You're not going to kill me. The number on the scale stops going down. We get annoyed. And because that eating approach wasn't designed to follow long term, it was by definition a diet, right? Then we go back to these old eating habits. We have less muscle on our body to be burning that extra fuel, and we gain the weight back as fat. So each time we have gained and lost in our lives, we might end up at the same number on the scale, but by body composition, we are fatter at that same number.
And less muscle.
Exactly. So we are actually deteriorating our health each time we've done that approach. Now, here we are later in life. We've done this maybe once, maybe many times over. We're now seeing, especially because of that estrogen change, we're now seeing the weight add on in the middle, which is a new area, right? We're like, what is happening now? And we still have that old approach of eat less, right? Well, our body says eat less. It's a time of famine. You're not going to kill me. I will survive. And the way I will survive is by holding on to everything you give me as fat, because fat is fuel stored to be used later. So what that looks like, maybe we eat like a bird most of the time, right? We eat less. Let's say I don't believe that like perfection even exists, and it's certainly not required, right? But let's say you go to a restaurant and you order steamed fish and vegetables, right? You're like, look at me. I am textbook perfect if it was a thing. If we have spent the entire day eating less, or that is the only thing we're eating in a day, our body is saying, you will not kill me. I will not burn this. I will store it to use it later to survive. And so even your textbook steamed fish and vegetables will be stored as fat. Because the thing that I say to everybody all the time, the body is always doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The body's job is to survive. So if the body's approach, if what it's doing in an effort to survive is holding on to fat, our job is to say, why does the body think that's what it is supposed to do right now? And we need to send all the other signals, signals of safety, signals of plentiful food, right? So that the body will burn the fuel that you're giving it. And this tracks to the stress piece too, because our biological stress response is the exact same as caveman hunter-gatherer times where I don't know why the example is always the saber-toothed tiger,
I know. We
but
got to
like,
come up with a new one. It's like
I
boring
know,
all the time.
right? But that's right. We're being chased by something. We're going to fight, flight, freeze, right? These days, fawn is actually added to that, but that's another story, right? So we fight or flight. Our body, by the way, that's why your insulin increases under stress, because your body is releasing fuel to be able to fight or flee. And then, in theory, caveman times, you run for a while, maybe you find somewhere to hide, you watch the predator go past you, and you start to calm down, right? Our body has that same stress response to our phone buzzing, to checking our email, to a conversation, like you were saying, whether it's a conversation at work or with your partner or with a friend. And so we end up in this constant stress response where we're never actually coming down the other side of that. And what was designed to last 20 minutes now lasts a lifetime. When we're stressed, when our body is in that stress response, any bodily function that is not critical to survival of the next 10 minutes turns off. Our metabolism turns off, our immune system turns off, our reproductive system turns off, growing hair and nails turns off, right? All of these things that are not important if we don't live for the next 10 minutes don't happen. Interesting what happens when we're now living in that state. We are constantly packing on excess weight. We are constantly getting sick. We are susceptible every time there's something in the air, right? We have a harder time putting on muscle. We have a harder time thinking clearly. We're losing our hair. We are breaking more bones, right? Every single thing in the body suffers when we are in that stress response. So all of these pieces come together to be the perfect storm that we experience later in life.
I've seen this over and over again since I started coaching women, and I would tell them, okay, we're going to exercise less, eat more. And they are so scared, so scared. If I do that, I'm going to gain weight, or if not. And pretty much almost every time it works, because we've got them out of that stressed state, cortisol, they're sleeping better, and just everything spirals in a much better way. But it was interesting. I sent this to you earlier about my husband who walked across Europe. He just got home. He walked for 11 months straight, just walking, starting from Estonia all the way down to Spain, and just his backpack, and he wasn't eating. And I said, why not? You've got to fuel the body. He goes, well, I can't find food. I'm in a village. There's nothing there. There's no one here. I said, well, you were supposed to plan your food, right? How do you expect? You're an athlete now. Okay. Athletes don't fast. Yes. And it wasn't that he wanted to, but it was convenient, and it was just eating nuts. And well, I'm a hiker, I can eat nuts. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he needed to lose some weight. So he was excited about this walk, saying, I'm going to lose all this weight. And I said, I don't know. From what I've learned and seen, maybe, but I don't think so. No, he comes back, not lost anything, and he needed to lose a little bit. Now we're rebuilding him, getting him healthy. And you would think, oh, wow, he can walk so far for sure. He's strong. He's fit for sure. But he's got this excess body fat and a very high visceral fat. And so this is exactly what you were saying. And it is that the body was in a starvation mode. And it's just, I don't know. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. But so now he's working with a nutritionist because he won't listen to me. But okay. So the nutritionist has him eating 300 grams of protein per day, which is 55. And he wants it to be lean protein, 55% of his daily calories for 4 weeks. Okay. This is not healthy to do. I would never recommend it. But it's evidently to reset his brain to get him out of starvation mode. Now, I would have done something like you exactly. I would have done exactly like you said. And in fact, the 10 days that he was home, he lost 4 kilos just because I was feeding him. But now we're working with somebody else who wants to really reset his brain. Now, I'm wondering if you've been you working with a lot of people in nutrition, how effective is this going to be, and is it really necessary?
So it's interesting. I wouldn't make that recommendation either. I am going to assume that this nutritionist has a methodology and a theory behind this approach.
Oh, I see it. There's method behind the
Right.
madness, and I'm just I'm watching
And
and
I appreciate that she has this with the caveat of it's for a finite period of time. I appreciate that you also shared this is not what would be recommended right across the board. And the thing that I would say to everybody is extenuating circumstances may call for a more dramatic approach for a finite period of time. The objective is not to maintain this inordinate level of intensity on something.
Mhm.
So it's about finding that balance between consistency and intensity. And in the long run, we're looking for consistency. When we're trying to address something specific, it might require a period of intensity. So it's almost similar to an elimination diet where people might end up with a diagnosis and they are given an elimination diet and they think, okay, well, I'm never eating these foods again. Au contraire, right? The objective of the elimination diet is to give our body a period of time to heal so then we can reintroduce these foods again. So if you're permanently living in an elimination diet, let's have a conversation, right? Let's look at how to repair the gut, how to repair what's happening so that your body can handle these foods.
Mhm. Yeah, I see them. I see a little bit of the method in terms of
Yeah.
resetting
Right.
the switch. It's working all right. He can't stand food. He's like, I don't want to eat. Please don't make me eat. I don't want. Have you ever tried
Right.
to eat 300 grams of lean protein?
It's a
Okay.
lot.
It
So for
is
everybody,
not.
it's a lot. And it's an interesting thing. So a lot of times, like I was talking about protein servings in ounces. And this, we're talking about grams. So for the people going, how do I keep track of it? The rule of thumb is
Yeah.
7 grams is like 1 ounce,
Hmm.
right? So what he's getting is somewhere, I can't do that math, but what is it, like 40 something ounces a day? That is a massive amount of food.
Thank God it's only going to be a short period of time. I will keep you
Yes.
posted. But
I can't wait
you
to
can,
hear.
yeah, but you can see already immediately, it's only 1 week. The brain definitely is satiated. And that's the idea, is to tell the brain, you are not going to starve. You're going to have so much food. You're going to be, and we have to keep it within a certain number of calories too. There is a whole method to this, but the brain is already shutting down, going, I will not starve. I'm going to get plenty of food. And then we're going to switch it and be
Yeah.
normal.
And right. And there are hormones, by the way. Like we were talking about estrogen and progesterone and those hormones. We talk about cortisol as a hormone and testosterone as a hormone. But there are hormones that tell us when we're hungry and when we're satisfied.
Hmm.
So leptin is the hormone that says, I'm done eating, right? We can become leptin resistant the same way that we can become insulin resistant. Right? Ghrelin is the hormone that tells us when we're hungry. If we continuously ignore that because we've been told to eat less, move more, right? And we like stick our fingers in our ears and we're like, la, 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 like I'm not hungry. I can't tell, right? I'm going to ignore you, hunger. We will become ghrelin resistant. We will stop responding to that hormone that tells us when we're hungry.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, especially when people say they're not breakfast people, especially when people say, I only need one meal a day. These are all flags to me of saying we have some leptin ghrelin resistance happening, and it's worth us looking at and exploring.
So you work with a lot of women as well and helping them with their nutrition and their choices. And there's a lot of media out there and people speaking as well about food fears. So I imagine, and women tend to be more in this category with disordered eating or emotional eating. And I think adding this fear of food is probably adding fuel to the fire. But what are your thoughts, and what do you tell these women who are scared of seed oils or are scared of, I don't know, eating fruit?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I sort of joke that we didn't get here from fruit. So relax. And I also admit relax is the worst word you could say to most people. Like even to me when somebody's right, go away. But here's the thing. The heightened stress around the food is more detrimental than anything in that food. The other piece is it's sort of my pet peeve with the whole intuitive eating movement is that our expectation when we hear about these things is that we're going to go from diet life, right? This is what I'm supposed to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, don't eat that, right? Like all of these rules to our interpretation of intuitive eating, which is no rules, everything goes, and we think that we're supposed to flip a switch. The truth is, it's a progression and it's a process. And it's a process of learning not just what I call the nutrition education we're all supposed to know and no one ever taught us, but also learning how our body communicates with us, learning the language of the body. Because we talk ourselves out of paying attention to that because we followed the rules. We outsource all of the thinking, all of the feeling to the rules of the plan or the diet or whatever it is. And so we teach ourselves out of paying attention to the body's signals. So a lot of the fear I see coming in around, I think that the only thing my body ever tells me it wants is bread and sugar. And that's actually a function of the approach to eating less, right? It actually is a function of malnutrition that we are craving those things. So a lot of times nighttime eating is directly connected to what's happening early in the morning, first part of our day. A lot of times sugar cravings are connected to undereating protein. And so one of the things that we do is when I start working with somebody, we focus on a menu plan that protein, fiber, quality, fat, right? It's a menu plan, guidelines, not gospel. And what ends up happening is a lot of these things that we're afraid of disappear on their own. And all of a sudden, we're in a place of observation and a place of curiosity. And food decisions become intellectual rather than emotional. I remember I used to work in hedge funds and I was health coaching on the side and doing all this stuff. And I remember there was a time where like Monday mornings in the kitchen on the floor, there was like a continental breakfast with all the mini croissants and mini muffins and all the pastry things. And I could usually go into the kitchen like twice to get water. But by the third time, it's like those croissants have a voice and they are calling your name. And I remember like I would walk in the kitchen and be like, why do I suck? Why can't I just not eat the mini muffin? What is wrong with me? Right?
Yeah.
Then I learned all this stuff. I was living this way. And I was like, I walked in the kitchen and I was like, oh my goodness, I get why that's appealing to me right now. Because my blood sugar is low. My body is looking for fuel. It therefore wants fast fuel. That's the mini muffin. What I actually need is to go eat the breakfast that I brought and then see how I feel about all the pastries in the kitchen. And lo and behold, once I ate the breakfast that I brought of protein, fiber, quality, fat, the mini muffin had no voice anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens when we learn to take it as a process rather than flipping a switch. When we relearn the language of the body, we're no longer fighting against it, but we're actually on the same team as our bodies. And that's what eliminates the food fear. That's what allows us to rehab everything from, our metabolism to our mood, to our energy, to our stress.
You're right. Absolutely. You've shared so much, actually, but I can see you've done a lot of work and you're coming up to nearly 600 podcast interviews now. So who has been the most enlightening guest? Because just in case people don't know, salad with a side of fries is a health and wellness podcast.
Yes, we call it balance, right? Salad with a side of fries, wellness without the weirdness. This is a tough question, I'm not going to lie. So, there's a couple that have a recency bias. So, one, this research came out last fall, and I went searching for the man who did the study, and I found him. And so I interviewed him. His name is Professor Dr. Ferdinand von Mayen. He is from Switzerland. And what his research showed is that our fat cells have memory. That our fat cells, the RNA of our fat cells changes from being in an obesogenic environment, from eating processed foods, from eating the typical Western diet. And the longer we're it, right, that happens over time of being in this obesogenic environment. And when we lose weight quickly, so their research was really it started on gastric bypass patients. And what they saw is that part of what contributed to the regain, right, to that relapse rate, was that these fat cells had an encoded memory for the obesogenic environment.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And so one of the things, and my brain goes to, okay, so what's the other side of that? Give me the next study, which they haven't done yet. But my interpretation and part of what we talked about is that to me, it stands to reason that how we go about removing fat is just as important as the fact that we remove fat from the body when it comes to long-term health. Mm-hmm. Because if the RNA changes, and we know that, right? We know this from his study, but we also know this when we think about epigenetics, right? There are changes to our biochemistry. So if we go about removing the fat in a healthful way over time, to me, it stands to reason that we also give those fat cells a capacity and a time frame to rewrite that RNA again for the healthful environment. Mm-hmm. And so there's a piece of keeping the weight off, long-term health, that I believe, confirmed with some of this research, is really a function of how we go about this approach. So that was one that I
That's
love
amazing.
him.
It sounds like it's just like muscle has memory. Fats
right.
have memory. And yes, so you want them to work in your favor, not
right.
out of your favor. So interesting. Okay. I'm amazed. I love what you had to share. I think everybody now knows what they need to do to balance out their blood sugar. And before I let you go, I want to make sure we understand a little bit more about your coaching community. You do also do one-on-one. Tell us a little bit more about what you got.
Oh, thank you. So I work with clients one-on-one or in small group cohorts for 12 weeks. So this is essentially 12 weeks for the education and to build the tool belt so that you can go live the rest of your life. It is not about needing to talk to me every week till the end of time. We start with a lot of the nuts and bolts nutrition. And then in the second half, we get into all the other stuff of habits, behaviors, challenges, travel, holidays, stress, sleep, food sensitivities, like all of the stuff that makes this a little more complicated so that you can have your health and your life too.
And you won't make them eat 300 grams of protein a day. Hopefully not.
If you figure out that that works for you, we'll talk about how to do this in a balanced way.
Yes, exactly.
With that said, I'm betting that's not the approach.
Well, I'm going to have a link to that coaching and how to reach out to you in the show notes, and your Instagram and your LinkedIn, your website, a salad with a side of fries.com. You got your YouTube, your TikTok. I'll have all that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Jenn, for your time and sharing all your knowledge.
Oh, Zora, thank you so much.
And thanks everybody else who made it to the end. You're awesome. Have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you guys are.